Hi, I'm Angelica, and this is a story about how my own family turned applause into exclusion, one blurry photo at a time. I was there for every moment of my sister-in-law's wedding, but somehow, I wasn't in the album. Not even a thank you. Just a message with a cropped picture and a smiley face. Why would someone erase you so beautifully, it almost looked like love? Have you ever been made to feel invisible in a room full of people who call you family? Let me know in the comments. The text message arrived while I was pouring lukewarm tea into a chipped ceramic mug, one of the few things in our house that still felt like mine. It buzzed across the kitchen counter, lighting up with Mallory's name and a stream of champagne emojis. Wedding album is live, so many beautiful moments. Feel free to download and share. I clicked the link. It wasn't jealousy. I wasn't expecting to be front and center. But I'd helped. I folded napkins. I wiped cake frosting off the floor. I took Delilah to the bathroom 5 times during the ceremony. I thought there might be a moment, any moment, where I existed beyond utility. As the photos scrolled by, a familiar ache settled behind my sternum. There was Mallory, radiant in satin, clinking glasses. Verna, her hand always in focus like she belonged in every frame. Even Derek made several appearances, laughing with the groom, holding Delilah on the dance floor. Me? One picture, from behind, blurry. Holding a tray of meatballs, no tags, no thanks, not even a glance. I stared at the screen until my tea cooled into nothing. Later that afternoon, Mallory sent me a private message. Thought you'd like this shot of you helping. Attached was that same photo, cropped even tighter. Half my face, mid-blink. I looked like I was about to sneeze. I didn't respond. I just stared at it. There was something more painful in the kindness than the omission. That's how they did it. That's how they always did it. With grace, with charm. With just enough plausible deniability to keep me from calling it what it was. Exclusion. Not forgetting, not overlooking, but editing. I closed the album, deleted the message, and left my phone face down on the counter. At dinner, no one mentioned the photos. Mallory shared a story about her honeymoon. Verna offered unsolicited advice about preschool piano programs. Derek listened and nodded. Delilah tapped her fork against her glass, humming a melody only she heard. I smiled when I was supposed to. I passed the salt. And later that night I scrolled through Instagram to see Mallory's story. A video clip, slow motion, Mallory raising a toast. To the women who keep this family beautiful and accomplished. Applause, laughter. The camera panned across the room, past Verna, past the bridesmaids, past my seat. I was at the table, but I had already left. Sunday brunch at Verna's house always came with a side of performance. The table was set with too many forks, her white plates arranged like museum exhibits. Mallory wore a dress too formal for an indoor meal. Derek scrolled his phone under the table. Delilah, in a floral sundress, swung her legs quietly from the edge of her seat. Verna lifted her mimosa with a smile too polished to be spontaneous. You know, she began, directing her voice to the whole table, but her eyes to no one in particular. Delilah sings just like the Caldwells. It's in our blood. A few chuckles, a murmur of agreement. I froze. No one turned toward me, not even Derek. I buttered my toast with shaking hands, the knife clinking softly against porcelain. After brunch, the kitchen cleared out. I stayed behind to rinse plates. That's when I heard Mallory in the next room, her voice just low enough to sound sincere. She means well, she said into her phone. But you know, Angelica wasn't always the most focused. Verna thinks she never finished college because of some guy. Ran off for a year, came back like nothing happened. It's no wonder she's sensitive about Delilah's talent. She laughed gently, like it was a harmless anecdote. I held a wet plate midair for what felt like a full minute before placing it, slowly, in the drying rack. That story wasn't true. I left school to care for my father during his last year of life. I made that choice without telling anyone because it wasn't their grief to carry. It wasn't their decision to judge. But silence, I'm learning, gets rewritten by louder people. I stepped outside into the backyard, where the humidity clung like guilt. I sat on the stone bench under Verna's overgrown wisteria and stared at my hands. They looked like my father's, broad-knuckled, practical. I remembered holding his water glass, feeding him broth in the last weeks. I remembered choosing that over papers and professors. I had never regretted it. Until now. Back inside, the house echoed with polite laughter. I didn't go back in. That evening, my phone buzzed again. A new message lit up the family group chat. From Verna. Delilah has the gift. I'd love to start training her personally, Caldwell style. No one replied. Not Mallory, not Derek, not me. I read it twice. They wanted her voice, not the one who gave it to her. The voicemail came while I was rinsing cereal bowls. Hi, this is Miss Taryn from Willow Creek Music. Just checking in. Wasn't sure if Delilah's family decided to formally withdraw her from class. Totally understand if so. I just wanted to clarify so we can update our records. I froze, hand in the dishwater, sponge dripping onto my wrist. I replayed the message twice. Withdraw her? I hadn't. I left the bowl half-rinsed and walked slowly to Delilah's room. She was coloring. Her bare feet dangled off the edge of the bed and the radio played softly, static-filled classical piano. I sat beside her. Hey, sweetie, I began gently. Miss Taryn called. She said you haven't been in class this week? Delilah didn't look up. Her crayon moved in slow circles across the page. Grandma said I don't need to go anymore, she murmured. She said it's expensive, and that you were too polite to say no. She didn't say it like it was wrong. She said it like it made sense, like she believed it. I smiled, somehow, and tucked a loose curl behind her ear. You like that class, don't you? Delilah shrugged. I guess. I stood up, walked back into the kitchen, and stared at the voicemail icon still glowing on my phone. Verna hadn't mentioned anything. Neither had Derek. No one asked me. They just decided. That evening, as I folded a load of laundry, my fingers stiff and the heat of the dryer still lingering on the towels, a memory crept in like dust under a door. Senior year. I had been offered a last-minute chance to audition for a statewide choral scholarship. My teacher was thrilled. I was terrified, but ready. I had practiced for weeks, but that same week my father collapsed at home. The kind of collapse that had no return. I stayed. I didn't go to the audition, and I never brought it up again. A month later, Verna told me, in passing, some voices are meant for kitchens, not stages. She was stirring soup at the time, like it was just a passing joke, but I remembered. I still do. That voice never left me. It wrapped around my spine every time I tried to speak up. It nestled in my throat when I thought of singing again. Now it was crawling into Delilah. I walked past her room later and saw her sitting cross-legged on the floor, coloring again. Her sketchpad lay open to a page where she'd drawn a microphone, carefully shaded, detailed, then scribbled out. I sat beside her, quiet, careful. You still want to sing at the recital next month? I asked. She didn't look at me, just flipped the page. I'm not good enough. Grandma says talent skips a generation. Something cracked in my chest. Not loud, not sudden, just permanent. This wasn't about a recital. It was about erasing the one place I was ever allowed to dream. The house smelled like leftover takeout and lemon-scented cleaner. It was Thursday night. Derek sat on the couch, legs propped on the ottoman, fingers moving between his phone and a bowl of chips. The TV was on, some cooking show where no one actually ate anything. I sat beside him, my arms crossed loosely, heart already halfway out the door. Mom just wants to help, he said, not looking at me. It keeps things calm. Calm, like a pond with something dead at the bottom. She means well, just let her teach Delilah, it's temporary. He said it the way someone offers a Band-Aid after ignoring a bleeding wound. I nodded, not because I agreed, but because I didn't have the strength to argue with a man who thought silence meant stability. Earlier that day, I'd gotten a call from Miss Taryn again. She's such a sweet kid, she'd said. I was surprised when you didn't show up for the parent check-in. I told her I didn't know about any meeting. Oh, she said, surprised. Verna mentioned you'd probably be too busy. I assumed you were updated on the switch. There was no switch. There was no update, just choices made on my behalf, because apparently my presence was assumed and my consent optional. I watched Derek laugh at something on his phone, the flickering blue light casting shadows across his face. He didn't even know. He never asked. He just let things happen, around me, over me, but never with me. The chips crunched too loudly. I hated how that sound now meant more than any conversation we had shared in weeks. "Derek," I said quietly. So softly it felt like I was speaking to the house instead of him. "You protect what you're afraid to lose." He blinked, finally looking up. "What?" I met his gaze, steady this time. "And you didn't protect me." He didn't answer. He never did. I stood, the silence between us now thicker than anything the TV could cover. I walked down the hall, past the framed wedding photos that never got dusted, into Delilah's room. She was already asleep, hugging a stuffed animal so tight it looked like it might burst. I leaned down and kissed her forehead, then gently shut the door behind me. On my way out, I paused, hand on the doorknob, heart still listening. Derek was still in the living room, the volume turned back up. I whispered to no one in particular, maybe not even aloud. "I want you to notice what's already gone." Saturday afternoon at Verna's was dressed up like a holiday. Folded napkins, a tray of lemon bars. Delilah in curls, holding her music sheet like it weighed more than it did yesterday. Verna called it a family showcase. Just something light, just for fun. But she brought out her old video camera. Not a phone, not casual. A camera with a red blinking light, a tripod, and her name written on the case in faded label maker tape. I was told to sit back and enjoy. "Just be the proud mom," Verna said with a pat on my arm, as if I'd been pretending to be something else. Delilah stood in the middle of the living room, the piano behind her untouched. She looked at me just once, before beginning to sing. She missed a note, then caught herself. Everyone clapped anyway. Verna beamed and said, "She's got her grandmother's control. Thank God she didn't inherit your shaky tone." Some relatives laughed, the kind of laugh people do when they don't want to choose a side. I smiled, or at least I made the shape of one. Later, when the lemon bars were just crumbs and Verna's camera had been packed away, I followed her into the kitchen. "Delilah is not your project," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp. Verna didn't even look up from the sink. She just needs direction, not coddling. I waited for her to say more. She didn't. My fingers curled around the edge of the counter. I didn't shake. I didn't cry. I just stood there, steady in a way I hadn't felt in years. That night I walked past Verna's room on the way to get a glass of water. Her door was cracked open. Mallory's voice on speaker clear as sunlight. "She's slipping, Mom. You can see it. She's too soft. If we don't step in now, Delilah's going to lose that edge," Verna replied, calm and certain. "We push now, before she grows soft too." I didn't drink the water. I didn't sleep. Instead, I opened the linen closet, pulled down a dusty folder wrapped in elastic, and carried it to the dining table. Inside were printouts, scrawled notes, old sheet music with markings only I understood. I smoothed out the pages one by one. If they wanted a performance, I'd give them one. The house had long since gone quiet, except for the occasional hum of the fridge and the creak of the wooden floor settling beneath old footsteps. Derek was asleep, or pretending to be. Either way, he didn't ask where I was going when I stepped out of the bedroom with the folder tucked under my arm. The laundry room was the only place in the house that felt truly mine. No one lingered there. No one barged in. It held nothing of worth to anyone else, which made it sacred. I turned on the washer, not because there were clothes to wash, but because the low, steady sound of spinning cycles masked breath and nerves. I placed the folder on top of the dryer, unlatched the elastic band, and peeled it open like a wound I had been afraid to touch. My old scores were still there, yellowing, marked in pencil, faint coffee stains along the corners. I ran my fingers along the bars of music, traced notes I once sang in front of strangers, back when I thought bravery was volume. I cleared my throat, closed the door behind me, and stood barefoot in my robe on the cold tile floor. One breath, then another. My voice cracked on the first note, then again on the second. But I kept going. I lost track of time. It was just me, the hum of the washer, and a girl I used to be. I didn't hear Delilah until she spoke. "Mom?" I turned. She stood at the doorway, hugging her stuffed rabbit, blinking like she had just stepped into a dream she didn't understand. "I didn't know you could sing." That sentence shattered something clean and deep. I wiped at my cheek. I hadn't even realized I was crying. "Why would you think I couldn't?" I asked. She shuffled her feet. "Grandma said, 'Good singers are born.' She said you were just loud." I crouched down, leveled myself with her, and placed a hand over her heart. "You're allowed to be loud," I whispered. She didn't answer. She just leaned into me, and I let her. After I tucked her back into bed, I stood in front of the hallway mirror, the one I had passed 1,000 times without looking. For the first time in years, I faced it. I saw the lines around my eyes. I saw the tiredness. But I also saw something else. I said quietly, "You're not invisible, not anymore." And the next night, I practiced again. The rehearsal dinner was held in the side ballroom of the most expensive hotel in Mobile. Crystal chandeliers dangled like quiet threats, and the tablecloths were the kind you couldn't crumple without someone noticing. I arrived early, like always, hoping to feel useful. But this time, everything was already done. Mallory spotted me near the entryway and walked over with arms wide, smile stretched too far. She hugged me like she was handing off something sharp. "You look lovely," she said, and before I could respond, she slipped a folded sheet of paper into my hand. "Here's the music for tomorrow." I opened it. Not the duet, not the arrangement we'd agreed on last month, not even the same language. It was an aria, in Italian, solo. My eyes stayed on the page for a beat too long. "This isn't what we practiced." Mallory tilted her head. "Oh, I thought you said you wanted something more challenging. You've been practicing, haven't you?" Her voice dripped with innocence, but her eyes didn't blink. Across the room, Verna nodded in approval, as if this was the natural order of things. There was no duet. There never had been. I spent the next 30 minutes in the dressing room pretending to fix my makeup. My hands shook every time I looked down at the page. The notes mocked me. The key change felt like a trap. I tried to hum a few bars, but my throat was tight, like something inside me was trying to climb its way out. Through the curtain, I heard laughter. "She'll either choke or walk away," Mallory said to someone I couldn't see. "Either way, she's out of the picture." I looked at myself in the mirror, still holding the sheet music. My lipstick was too soft at the corners, and there was a line of mascara beneath one eye I hadn't noticed earlier. I didn't fix it. The ballroom quieted when I stepped onto the stage. Someone dimmed the lights. The microphone buzzed softly in my hand, reminding me I had the power to walk away. Mallory stood near the back, phone raised. Verna leaned into a cousin, whispering with that signature tilt of her head. Derek was near the front, but he wasn't watching. He was checking his watch. I exhaled once, low and steady. This time, they expected me to break. So I did something worse. I stayed. The lights dimmed as the chatter in the reception hall fell into something close to silence. The pianist sat poised, waiting for my signal, sheet music resting on the stand. The wrong sheet music. The one they gave me. The one I wouldn't use. I walked toward the microphone like I was walking into the middle of a storm I'd already studied. The fabric of my dress brushed against my heels, the only sound louder than my heartbeat. My fingers were cold, but my back stayed straight. Mallory leaned toward someone and whispered, not as quietly as she thought, "Let her sing alone. It'll be hilarious." Her voice curled around the room like perfume. I stepped up to the mic. Verna sat with her arms folded, jaw tight. Derek kept his eyes down. Delilah stood in the corner, holding on to the hem of her cardigan like it could save her. I didn't wait for the pianist. I closed my eyes. And I sang, not the song on the page, not the one they set me up to fail with, but the one I practiced in the laundry room when no one cared enough to listen. It wasn't perfect. My voice cracked on the third note and wobbled near the bridge, but it didn't matter, because it was mine. It came from somewhere deeper than muscle or lungs. It came from silence, and from every time I swallowed a reply to keep the room peaceful. From every rolled eye, from every backhanded compliment, from every moment I let someone else narrate who I was. I opened my eyes halfway through. Verna's expression had frozen, somewhere between shock and disbelief. Mallory's phone was still pointed at me, but her smile had vanished. When the last note rang out, it didn't echo. It landed. And then, slowly, someone clapped. Then another. Then the whole room stood, applauding, louder than any microphone could amplify. I bowed once, just enough. I didn't need more. Mallory turned away, adjusting her dress. A voice called out from the crowd, playful but pointed. Verna, you next? Verna's smile flickered. I'm not feeling well. It's my throat. She left through the side door. Delilah ran up to me, her shoes tapping fast against the floor. That was you? She asked, eyes round with something close to awe. I brushed a strand of hair from her face, letting the moment sink into both of us. Yes, baby, I said quietly. That was me. Delilah was still curled against me when the sun touched the bedroom window. Her hand rested on my arm, fingers twitching now and then, like she was still dreaming. I stayed still, watching the light creep across the ceiling. My phone buzzed once, then again. I reached for it with slow fingers. Messages filled the screen. Aunts, cousins, a few old friends who'd seen a clip Mallory posted and reshared without comment. The words were kind, almost stunned, like they'd seen something they weren't supposed to see and didn't know how to name it. You were amazing. I had no idea. I hope Delilah knows how lucky she is. But Verna hadn't written. I didn't feel pride. I didn't feel anger either. Just quiet. A kind of stillness I hadn't had in years. Not the silence of being ignored, but the silence of choosing not to speak. At breakfast, Delilah pushed her cereal around for a while before setting down her spoon. Her eyes weren't sleepy anymore. Mom, she said. I looked up. Can you teach me to sing like that? I blinked once, and again. My throat tightened, but I didn't cry. There was nothing to cry about. She had finally seen me, not just as the person who made her lunch and zipped up her coat, but as someone who held music inside her, someone worth listening to. Later that week, Verna stopped by. It wasn't long, just a knock, then a gift bag on the porch. Inside was a metronome, a small one, vintage, wood-paneled. There was a folded note on top. It's for Delilah, and I should have said this before, but you were good. No signature, just a period. I texted back, thank you, but I didn't invite her in. That night, after the house had gone quiet and Delilah was humming to herself while sketching music notes at the kitchen table, I opened the old cedar chest in our bedroom. Inside were my performance shoes, black suede, low-heeled, worn at the toes. I placed them gently into a new box labeled Keep, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was saving something just in case. I felt like I was keeping something that belonged to me. Delilah looked up, pencil still in her hand. Do you think I could sing with you next time? I smiled and nodded, letting the warmth settle across my chest like a soft exhale. Not all wounds heal, but some of them become the reason you finally sing. Sometimes the silence we carry isn't weakness. It's what teaches us how to rise. I spent years shrinking myself to keep the room comfortable, letting others rewrite my story while I smiled through it. But healing doesn't always arrive with noise. Sometimes it shows up in the middle of the night, barefoot, in a laundry room, holding on to one note that refuses to die. If you've ever felt like your voice didn't matter, I want you to know, it does. And if you've ever been made to feel small in your own story, I hope you remember this. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to sing. What about you? Have you ever been underestimated by someone close to you? What did you do with that pain? If this video touched your heart, leave a comment with the number 1 or let me know where you're watching from. If it didn't connect with you, I'd love to hear why. Your voice matters too. And if you don't want to miss the next story, that might just be the one you needed today, subscribe to the channel now. Someone out there is waiting to hear your story too.